Tensions are running high during this political campaign, and election officers say they must stay vigilant. The Illinois State Board of Elections office in Springfield was evacuated last Friday after getting an envelope in the mail with a return address of USTEA, which stands for U.S. Traitor Elimination Army. Several states have received similar packages, and some have contained an unknown substance. Spokesperson for the Illinois State Board of Elections, Matt Dietrich, led a talk on election security and misinformation with the McLean County League of Women Voters in Bloomington last night. In this conversation with WGLT correspondent Colin Hardman, Dietrich says he hopes this incident doesn't become a sign of what's to come.
I don't know if there's any way to anticipate whether these kinds of things are going to proliferate as we get closer to the election. It's really unfortunate that people feel emboldened enough that they can do this sort of stuff, or that they even would have any motivation to do it. But really what happened last week, we were kind of fortunate because we received it on Friday. Other election offices around the country started getting them on Tuesday, became big news. So we pretty much knew it was coming, and we had a fair idea of what the parameters would be, what the envelope might look like, what kind of writing might be on it, that sort of thing. So we knew it was coming, but it's not as if we're terrified because of these things, but it is just a little bit unnerving that this kind of thing is going on, especially in light of some of the real political violence that we've had over just this summer. So we are cautiously hopeful that this won't produce copycat kinds of schemes, but we won't be surprised if it keeps up and if it heats up more toward Election Day. But it's really, there isn't much precedent for this, so we really can't say whether we expect it to increase or decrease in frequency. We hope it decreases.
Sure. You mentioned a little bit there and also earlier during your talk, if I recall, that no one at the office was especially shaken by this. Apart from the kind of advance notice you had from other offices receiving something similar, are there other reasons why that is?
Well, they weren't shaken because we pretty much knew it was coming. But I will say that now I've been at this agency for several years. I started in 2018, so I've been through 3 election cycles so far. This is the second presidential cycle that I've been through. So I saw in 2020 how the rhetoric really heats up. And I think that those of us who were there through that 2020 cycle were really aware that things can get very heated and people can do some fairly crazy things. I will say that some of our newer employees who had just come on this year, on Friday, they were, they thought it was to them it was a real eye-opener that, this is not just something that happens somewhere else that you see in the news. It's something that they are in the center of. We also have in our office, we have a special device that scans the mail for potentially harmful things. Everything goes through that now. It wasn't that long ago that would have been unheard of in a state election office. Why would you need something like that? But that's the reality of what we're living in right now.
Touching on the recency of that, actually, I think anyone would agree that in any election, some people who had it go the way they wouldn't have preferred were going to call foul and say the election was cheated. Over the past few years, we've had a bit of a change in that a major candidate has been echoing and forwarding those thoughts in many ways. Does that strike you as the main reason that these kind of threats and conspiracies have been emboldened recently?
Well, it's in the incident that we're talking about with the letter that we received. I have no idea what the motivations of those people were. And, one of the things that the message that we've consistently tried to get out at the State Board of Elections is we know there are some people who have heard a lot of the talk about the rigged election of 2020, that voting machines are somehow manipulated, all this kind of thing. We can fully understand how, even if someone who didn't give it any credibility just a few years ago, you hear it enough, you hear it repeated enough, you hear your friends talking about it, you might become a little curious about it. Despite the atmosphere that we're in now, where you have the letters like we received, and we've had 2 attempted assassinations during this cycle, tensions are somewhat high, but we don't want to add to that. And we're not going to be combative with people who may have beliefs about the election that we know to be untrue, but we want the chance to explain why it's untrue, why they can have faith in their elections, just like they always did in past years.
Sure. Now, on the topic of cybersecurity, which was a major point in your talk tonight, one of the things I wanted to touch on was the idea that even if a hacker manages to breach a system that's not really consequential, that doesn't really allow them to influence the outcome, especially because balloting machines aren't internet connected.
Correct.
The damage they can inflict is also undermining confidence in the election. It sounded almost like you were saying that can be even more threatening in some cases. Is that accurate?
Well, sure, because if people are not confident that their voter data is being held securely, then they're not going to register to vote. And they're not going to, consequently, they're not going to vote. They're not going to take part in the system. And the example that I always use is, even if the smallest county in Illinois, if that clerk's office on election day or the day before election day, if someone in that office accidentally clicks the wrong link in an email and opens up a malware attack that freezes up their county clerk's systems, it's going to become national news, because that's an election office. And everyone's going to wonder, is Russia behind it? Is China behind it? Is Iran doing this? What about, is North Korea? What's happening here? Is our votes being stolen? Are registrations being eliminated? Or all of these kind of things come into play, and they all come back to eroding voter confidence in the security of the overall election system.
That was Matt Dietrich from the Illinois State Board of Elections with WGLT's Colin Hardman. Dietrich says the Russians know U.S. election systems are almost impenetrable because it's so decentralized. So they try to influence elections through disinformation online to sow distrust and pit Americans against one another.